On this episode of the Sacred Playgrounds podcast, we've got guests whose names are spelled the same. We're here with Anna and Anna, and we're going to have a chat about why camp, the question why camp from multiple perspectives, the perspective of a parent, the perspective of a church leader, the perspective of a camp enthusiast. Welcome to the Sacred Playgrounds podcast, where we turn numbers into stories and data into insights. We dive deep into theology and research, paired with practical wisdom and action steps to help camping ministries thrive. I'm your host and producer, Jared Rendell, a camp enthusiast and part of the Sacred Playgrounds team. This podcast features Dr. Jake Sorensen, a scholar, author, practitioner, and the founder of Sacred Playgrounds. Be sure to subscribe, submit a question to us to be featured on the podcast, and click that support button to help make these episodes happen. Find us on Facebook and Instagram at Sacred Playgrounds or at sacredplaygrounds.com. Wonder with us what God might have in store at your sacred playground. Here we are. Welcome to the playground, everyone. Welcome, friends. Today, this podcast does not feature Jake Sorensen. Today, it's Anna and Anna, which I get to say a lot because Jake and I talk about our incredible spouses sometimes, and that's who we've got on today. So today, our guests are Reverend Anna Sorensen, who is on our Sacred Playgrounds team, spouse to Jake Sorensen, whose voice you're hearing a lot of times, and my wife, Anna. They are joining us today because we've got a conversation to have about camp, and particularly the big question, why camp? We'll talk more about that in a second, but we're going to talk about three of the hats that they wear. The reality is they wear a significant amount of hats in our families and in their role, like their professions, their vocations. You have a lot of hats, ladies, that you wear. So thanks for joining. Thanks for hopping on today. So here's the plan, everyone. We are going to try to answer this big question, why camp? I'll explain more actually and about kind of where this came from, but this is a question that we've gotten sort of down the line. We've heard from our camp friends, from our camp leader friends, and even from our church friends that they are needing some equipping. They're needing some info and some support in kind of making the case for camp to parents. And so we're going to explore that today. We're going to make Anna and Anna wear a couple of their hats. And we're going to talk about three different perspectives. And they both have, they'll tell you about it in a second, they both have experience and perspective with each of these hats. They are moms. They are currently or have been either full-time staff and are engaged in volunteering and things like that with church communities. And they also love camp. They're camp enthusiasts as well. So we're gonna put on those different hats a few different times. But let's let you get to know them just a little bit, and they'll tell you about how they wear those hats. Anna, why don't you go ahead and go first?
Sorensen, as Jared said before, I'm spouse to Jacob, whose voice you get to hear a lot on this podcast with Sacred Playgrounds. My title is Director of Operations, but I'm kind of project manager / payroll / HR / anything else that needs getting done.
That's right.
In addition to that, I serve as associate pastor at Prince of Peace Lutheran Church near La Crosse, Wisconsin, and I serve on the Synod staff as the director of a special project that encourages congregations and camps to fully engage children's whole selves in worship. And my camp enthusiast hat is I currently serve on a camp board of directors, which has been fun to be on the kind of the governance side of it.
Not to mention, between keeping, Jake and the rest of our team straight, you've got a couple of boys,
Yep.
one at home for now, one at college.
Yes. Parenting two budding adults, a 17-year-old and a 20-year-old.
Thanks, Anna. Hi, Anna.
Hi, Jared. You all get to hear my spouse's voice as well, and some of my kids even, which is pretty fun. I get to listen to those on the daily, but you get to hear them here on the podcast too. I'm Anna Rendell, and I am married to Jared. We have 4 kids. They are ages 13, 10, 9, and 4. So we kind of have the gamut right now. Among other things, well, with my mom hat, I guess I love being kind of our family registrar for all of the activities and the church things and papers that come home from school, the keeper of the calendar. That is one thing that I do as a mom, and I actually really like it. My church ministry worker hat. I went to college for youth ministry. I have a degree in youth and family ministry, and I served full time as a youth director for many years, and then went into nonprofit work for church and served as a social media congregational consultant, all the while still loving camp. And currently at church, I'm a member of our moms group and I help plan some activities for that. And I'm also a confirmation small group guide for my 13-year-old and his confirmation group. I work full-time from home for the faith branch of Hallmark called Dayspring. I'm in digital marketing for Dayspring. And I do a lot of writing as well. I have written a couple of my own devotional books for women and then have done projects through Dayspring, writing devotionals and magazine articles and planners and all kinds of words. And then for camp was always a really important part of my life growing up. And I worked at camp in college. I was on summer staff for several years, wrote curriculum, and then put it into practice with campers. And then got married at camp and have now taken our kids to camp. We went to family camp and now our kids are campers. We call them campers in our house. So, yeah, those are the hats that I wear.
Thank you, friends, ladies, for being here. Over this next little bit, so the goal is we want to hone in on yes, the data says, of course, and also, these perspectives from these different hats on this changed and still changing landscape of parenting and this changed and still changing landscape of church engagement. And we're trying to focus in on these most important influences, these most important reasons why a parent might say yes to camp, why a parent might say, yeah, my kids are going to do this. This is going to be part of their lives, part of our summers, part of their experience, because we think it's important. What are the things that drive that? And so getting an idea from these different perspectives, thankfully we have these unique women who can wear those different hats. So that's how we're going to do this. We're going to put on one hat at a time, and I'm going to ask them some questions, and we'll just get curious and see where we go. That's the plan. All right. So we're going to put on, if we were on video, this would be like literal hats. I should have gotten actual mom hats. So we're going to put on the mom hat first. All right. So we're going to talk about a little bit about parenting, about parent life, mom life in 2025, and where we are, right? Because we know from, and this part's multi-year data, that 90% of parents say it's clear that camp had an impact on their child. We've aggregated all that data together. It's one of my favorite stats. It's on my business card, because I think this just is this clear stat that really matters, that camp's having an impact. Parents are saying that at a 90+% clip. And it's telling us that parents want what camp is. How do we get there? How do we get them to opt in and do those things, or what might be roadblocks? So those are some of the questions we're going to explore. So here's my first question. You two, Anna, why don't you start with this? What do you think parents, Anna, add in here after, but what do you think parents want most for their kids these days? Put your mom hat on. Think about your families. What do you think are the things that parents want most for their kids these days?
I think first and foremost, we want our kids to be safe. In all of the meanings of that word, right? Physically safe, socially, emotionally, spiritually. I think in my parenting life stage also, I'm really thinking about wanting to raise, young men who have a deep sense of empathy and caring in the world. I don't know that the world models that for them a lot. To have a sense of caring and a sense of community to the world around them, their neighborhood, and to know that they are deeply, deeply beloved.
Well, yeah, I think safety is number one. We see so many ways that are new still that we're still fumbling through. Social media and screen time and overcommitment and all of those things that add up to unhealthy people, whether you're a kid or a grown up. But I think that safety is it's first for me, and that also then they can have fun within those boundaries as well, that they can become those empathetic partners if that's the path they go, or just people in the world. So I think that's what I want most for them too, is that safety and that fun within those lines.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Do you think that's true for your, like, Anna, I'm thinking about, the moms group at church. Like, you just, last Sunday you sat in with those moms. Anna, you see young families and things at church. Do you think that carries? Like, do you think that's true for, your mom friends, those young families that you interact with?
Yeah, yeah. I think I also want to add in, I want my kids to be challenged. I think sometimes safety comes with such firm boundaries that we don't let the kids test out their identity and grow and fail in safe ways. So um, I want to throw that one in there too. I want them to be
Well, that's a
challenged.
good point, and we know camp's good for that. Like,
Yeah.
we paid attention to some of those stats this summer. We called it out, I think, a couple of weeks ago. Like, one of our stats of the week is around parents overwhelmingly agree that they like when they encounter challenges at camp. It is that often that safe place for folks to stretch and to grow and to learn. They think it's good when they encounter challenges because of the character that builds.
Mhm.
Because that's, I mean, the other thing that I think we've heard in the data overall is that, well, like you said, they want to be challenged. They want, like, they're sending their kids to this is probably true broader camp. Like, they're sending their kids to these experiences during the summer, intentionally for some kind of learning and growing, whether that's sports camp and they're going to, get better and figure that out, or whether that's, the kind of camps that we connect with because they expect them to learn and grow, yes, in their faith, but that's why we measure self-confidence and, leadership and things like that, because they want those character traits to grow.
I think it changes too a little bit. Like, I'm thinking of those moms. I am the one with the older kids sitting in that group. A lot of them have just littles, and we have one real little, but I've also got the perspective of the teenager. And so I think that changes too when you're worried about your kid literally launching themselves off anything, or like that's where you're at. And so it changes too, I think, as they grow, of what you want most for them.
Yeah. Okay, so if we know camp does that, why isn't every parent ever period signing their kids up for camp? Like, what are the things that might keep a mom from going down that process? And these might be some really tangible things, but that also might be some, things they're wondering about. Like, what might be some of the roadblocks or things in the way of them? Yeah, of course I'm doing that.
I don't think they necessarily know. Like, if somebody puts the opportunity in front of you that your kid can get all these awesome benefits and you can figure out the financial end of it, or the scholarships are put before you, or your church is going to pay for your kid to go, I think we need to do a good story about a good job of telling that story. And maybe the counter to that is they've heard a story of things that didn't go well.
Sure.
Because it take, one
So there's some
bad
whatabouts.
experience will spread
Mhm.
throughout a mom group, right?
Mhm. Yeah, that's a
I
thing.
mean, not to exclude the dads, but I think the mom
Sure.
gossip line might be a little quicker.
Mhm. We're the ones who share those things in the hallways and what you heard about this, and yeah.
Well, and you're also the ones who actually click the button to sign up for camp most often. Like, we
80%
measured that too.
of the
Think so.
campers are mom
Yeah.
signups.
Our mom signups. Yeah, it's
I
a ton.
I can these aren't things that have stopped us. Like, our kids go to camp when they're old enough. One isn't. One can go to a weekend, and two of them can go to a full week, just age-based. But I can see where, we've even talked about, like, the camp that our church sends kids to up their prices this year. It's going to cost more than our mortgage to send them to camp this year. And that is a real thing, because yes, the camps are the church, like, hopefully they have things in place to support families, but it is another thing that I have to do. It's another thing to track down and figure out and discuss and dredge up enough, like, emotional quota for the day to do. So I get that piece, it could be easier just to let it drop.
Sure.
So that could be one thing. And the time is another. I know right now it is January, and I think when I used to tell you, Jared, that, like, preschool registration opened in February, I think you thought I was being a little type A, but it does. And you have to figure it all out now in January when we're barely coming off of Q4. And for our family, that means lots of birthdays and all the holidays. And I'm in marketing. It was our busiest season. And so when I have to jump right into figuring out the summer in January, it's just a lot. And so I can see where, and I've heard, well, I just didn't do it. Now it's full and it's March or whatever it may be, So I can see those as roadblocks for a person who is feeling full up already. I totally agree with what you said, Anna, about, like, we have to tell that story and be compelling and let our kids make the case as well. But I can see where those things,
Just the logistics.
yeah,
Like, if you're on the fence and you get to the registration form and
Right.
it's too complicated,
right.
or the website's not working,
Mhm.
Those are all opt-out. Those
they're
are opt-out triggers. That's important to remember. Like, so checking our sort of user experience for
Mhm.
for moms and those actual processes, but in the decision making leading up there. Okay, that's helpful.
As I say, Anna,
Go ahead.
the calendar stuff doesn't get easier. It just gets further out, because now with kids my age, we're looking 12 to 15 months ahead when we're talking about, like, music department field trips
Mhm.
and when is the state tournament if they get in, and those kinds of things.
Mhm.
Yeah. Sorry, you're just on the cusp of that.
Thanks a lot,
Thankfully,
Anna.
Anna's really good at that. She's really good at that. I am the one who thinks maybe 15 minutes ahead. So I appreciate our
shocked.
puzzle pieces there. You're deeply shocked, right?
18 years into marriage, it's still a growing edge, if you will.
That's right, it is.
Hey, camp friends. The Sacred Playgrounds team is committed to keeping our podcast free because we believe that the impacts and stories of camp should be shared far and wide. But it isn't free to produce. We keep everything in-house, but even so, each episode costs us about $450 to produce. If you find these conversations, quick camp questions, and stats helpful in your ministry, consider buying the team a cup of coffee. We use the Ko-fi platform to accept your one-time and recurring offers of support. ko-fi.com/Sacred Playgrounds. Thanks.
All right. You could keep your mom hats on all day. We're going to take that one off for now, and we're going to put your church leader hat on. So this is our second proverbial hat that you're going to wear. All right. So you are either currently on or have served on church staff, and have also just engaged in congregational church life in different ways as a participant, as a leader, as a volunteer. So we're going to put that hat on. You're a church leader now. We know that 90% of campers agreed this last summer that my questions about God and faith were taken seriously. It's the main thing that aligns church and camp. Model are different, somewhat. We'll get there, but those are things that align church and camp. We're here for the formation of faith, for the formation of lives, but lives of faith in particular, right? And we're learning from the things in the Rhythms of Faith project, for example, that the camps even that are thriving, the camps that thrive see themselves philosophically as part of the ecosystem of faith formation. And the two of the other main players, the most influential players in that ecosystem, are homes, families, parents, and church communities. And so, I mean, that's the heart of that project is connecting that group and seeing camp as a catalyst for those things, not as the destination, but a catalyst to those other things. We know parents, we talked about this before, parents are the most influential. Those conversations are the most influential things. So how can, you got your church leader hat on, how can camp be most valuable for a church leader? How can camp be most valuable for a church leader and their mission, their call, their purpose as a church leader?
Make it easy for me to tell your story. And I guess what I mean by that as a pastor is I get about, 40, 50 emails a day. And a lot of them are things people want announced, they want handed out, they want information shared. So if you've got an ask, give me the announcement text, give me the PowerPoint slide, give me the poster, give me the words, because I'm doing that for lots of people. So because I'm already on your team, so make it easy for me to be on your team.
And share that story. I love that. I know there was one year where, as campers, we were sent their a synopsis of the curriculum they were going through, and I think, yeah, if we can give even more, I mean, help me help you help the parents. Like, give it packaged up nicely so I can email it then to the parents to say, here's what they're doing, here's the meal prayer you can do at home. We're going to do this on Wednesday night before we eat pizza too. That ease and that simplicity, don't make me dig it out or like try to get my 12-year-old to tell me the meal prayer he remembers. That's not going to happen. Equip me as a church leader to help bring those faith practices into our building and into their homes. That's what's going to make it easy and stick.
And honestly, tell me who in my community was there.
Sure.
Because sometimes
they know, sometimes they don't.
Sometimes they funnel through the church, but sometimes they don't, right? And maybe there's an opportunity. Yeah, there's an opportunity to say, hey, you were at camp this summer. We're doing camp worship. We're having a campfire and sharing our favorite memories. Like there's becomes potential overlap and outreach opportunities too.
Yeah. Yeah. So I hear that, equip them theme. We know, I mean, camp leaders, feel it too, but like, we know church staffs, almost all of them could be doubled and there would be work to do. Right. We talked about that with our pastors at our church. It's like, we could have 4 pastors and the work would not stop. And we have 1.5. And I think that story is true for lots. Okay. What about things? What about things that would be a disconnect for a church leader? Like, what might be things that, like, if you're a church leader, you want to be on the same team. We're going to come back to that idea in a minute here, but you want to be in the same team. Right? You're heading the same direction. You have some similar goals. What are the kind of things that could be a disconnect? Like, if a camp does this or says this, or if they don't do this or don't say this, what might be some of those things that would be a disconnect where you go, I'm going to be either a detractor or maybe an accommodator, or some of the terms we've used for this church, versus what we want is, right? Camps want their church leaders to be, the pastors, the youth folks, to be raving enthusiasts for camp, right? That would be great if we felt like that. What are some of the things that might be a disconnect there?
If we're not made to feel welcome there as a staff member, I think it's so meaningful. Okay, a little of the mom hat. I think it's so meaningful to know that I have, when a church leader or staffer takes the time to go spend time at camp with the kids and they're in there. But as the staffer, if I feel weird or awkward or uninvited or not welcome, I don't want to go. So make that easy too. Or whatever, it could be something little. Get me a canteen card, or make a sign for my door, or whatever, the little things, those all add up too. But help me get there. That could be one thing.
The little noticings if you're on site.
Yeah.
Are you welcome? Are you invited?
Right.
if you're going to downplay your Christian identity and the faith forming pieces as a church leader, I got other options
Mm-hmm.
because there are places that are leaning in on that.
Yeah, we get curious. We measure kind of that faith-centered aspect, and is faith being kind of compartmentalized in the day, or is it being integrated into all the things? It seems like it might be pretty important that that's integrated. And the other thing is then that carries over experientially. Like if they're connecting those experiences, not necessarily just official camp Bible study, but if they're going back to church or home again, even, and saying this, this felt like this reminds me of this connects to this experience that I had then.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you, this is kind of the negative example story as well. And I think I can share this because I told the director. I was a church staff person, and I was with campers at camp, and the building I was staying in, it was a little bit nicer, adult accommodations, hospitality, all of that. And I hear this noise. It's evening, like after campfire, and there's a bunch of campers in this building. Okay. Well, they were going to watch a movie. And I would just thought to myself, I worked really hard to get adults in the congregation to pay a lot of money for my young people to be at camp. And you brought them inside, and this is in DVD time, they put on a DVD of a movie that I could have gotten from my public library for free and shown for free at church. I was not impressed.
Mm-hmm.
Because camp is something different.
Yeah.
So let it be something different.
And we're saying yes to that on purpose. As a church leader who's spending time and social capital with those families, big time.
Yep. And
Yeah.
money.
And regular capital.
And regular capital.
Regular capital.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Be different.
Yeah. Okay. A church leader hat off for the moment, camp enthusiast hat on for a quick one or two, right? So, you were both camp enthusiasts, both camp has been a formative part of your own faith in a way that you have served the church and the world. You credit camp with formation for your kids. So you actually said this already, Anna. So I'm curious to maybe a little more about this. In what ways are church leaders and camp leaders on the same team? Right? We know that like this last summer, 92% of campers agreed that they were strengthened in their faith at camp. So one, to seed it, is like there's this missional alignment. We are looking the same direction because we want and are building experiences that form faith. We are glad to hear that folks are strengthening their faith at camp. It's one of the highest levels of agreement, thankfully. So what other ways are camp leaders and church leaders kind of on the same team?
We're a whole ecosystem, right? Like, I think it's easy in church life. I know in congregational life, it's really easy to kind of get siloed and like what we're doing here in this building or this neighborhood, our program. And I think it can be that way at camp too. But we're not, if we think of these places as buildings, we're not like separate little compounds, right? We're a whole neighborhood together. So looking for those natural overlap places, looking
I like that analogy.
the connections that naturally occur because we have aligned mission.
Mm-hmm. And just remembering that and leaning into it and remembering that our language matters and how we speak about their church or the church or those church practices you mentioned, Anna, that all matters. And we can't disparage, even if we think it's another team. They're going home here. This is the bulk of their world. That matters.
I've spent most of my ministry life in very small rural congregations. We are very aware that we don't have the excitement or the resources in these kinds of churches. And I don't need my camp sort of reinforcing the message that church is boring.
Yeah. Faith is only fun at camp. At church, we just do like
boring faith.
Confirmation or,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Again, so I can, if you give me your songbook, we can tie it together.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe you could do the favorite old hymn
Mhm.
that they're going to sing with the grandmas at church also.
So there's a little bit of that, like making some of these things, and we've been talking about that for years. Like this, like should church be more like camp? Well, okay, should camp be more like church? Should be, I mean, both
Yes,
and, right?
yes,
So that
yes.
there are experiential. It's not the first time that question's come up. Or whether campers have asked it or church staff have asked it, but for there to be some experiential alignment feels valuable, and that actually is where you can put your mom hat back on again. Where when we are creating experiences that are to make it easy for those moms, like that are easy to take home, both in they're equipped and we're training campers. Right? This is part of where we've seen some people make some strides in, like they're training campers on how to pray before a meal,
Mhm.
right? And or they're training campers on these things that they can, on how to have conversations around faith, because they are going to do it in their cabin and it's going to start to feel natural by the end of the week. So when we have these experiences that we want aligned, when we're doing that super intentionally in our camp programs, so that it feels like that at church, and when they come back to camp it feels like that a little, and when they go home it feels like that a little, that feels like this way that we end up with this embedded, integrated into all the things faith. But it's going to take some intentional programming and training and things like that from a camp perspective. Like we've had this analogy. I mean, we've talked about like, oh, camp is passing back and forth. We're passing back and forth from church to camp, and I get that a little bit. And of course, there's some of that, but like, Anna, you're a track person. You've seen the baton get dropped a lot of times in the midst of passing. If we are on the same road, right? This is like road to Emmaus, not versus where we're on the same road. And by the way, Jesus is there too, and we're just walking together, right? Because we're on the same team. So sort of a gauge of, hey, to what extent are we on the same team with these church leaders? Yeah. Thank you. We have. You should see the outline, everybody, right? Because we had 6 more questions for each thing, and so we could dive into these things. I would love to hear if you have some key questions for some of these, and these multi-perspective folks, these people that wear a lot of these hats. Gosh, use them, ask them if they are a parent, if they're a church leader, they are one of your camp enthusiasts. Check in with them, have this kind of conversation with them is part of it. We're going to do some of this equipping. We've got a new thing we're going to share that answers this why camp question. And we're using even conversations like this and a lot of the questions that we've been asked and learned to put something together to your point about, like, we got to make it easy. All right. So we've got something coming out, and the idea is we're going to equip you to equip those church leaders down the line to equip their families. And so it's a product, like, we're going to pop that in there. We're going to pop it in our store. It'll be something you can easily download, edit, and make use of, and equip your church leaders then to kind of make this case, to have these conversations. This was helpful, you guys, so much to get to know some of these perspectives. I think they're shared across. So thanks for wearing these multiple hats. Oh, before we go, we're going to do our stat of the week.
Stat of the week. Stat of the week. Stat of the week.
All right, our stat of the week this week is 90%. 90%. You can, as a reminder, you can download this in the show notes so that you can share this yourself, or you can just go ahead and hit share where you find it on our social spaces, Facebook or Instagram. You can hit share from there. So here's what this stat says. 90% of summer 2024 campers, so this is from the Effective Camp projects that happened this last summer. 90% of campers agreed with the statement, "My questions about God and faith were taken seriously." I love how we ask this question. It's one of the things that goes into the faith-centered characteristic. So we've got this indice, and we measure the faith-centeredness of camps. And one of the questions that feeds into that is this question where campers can select their level of agreement with this statement. And the statement, again, is, "My questions about God and faith were taken seriously." And I feel like there is just kind of a special depth to asking this like this. Like, we ask about, things like, well, another one, for example, 92% of campers said I was strengthened in my faith. 86% of their parents say my child was strengthened in their faith. And of course, that's a valuable general statement. But this idea about their questions about God and faith being taken seriously brings a different depth to that. For a couple of reasons. One, when they're asking questions, camp leaders, that's something we want to embrace and welcome. And
early in the week. Make sure staff know to say that at some point early in the week. Hey, you can ask questions this week. We're going to explore this week. If you have a question about life and God and faith, this is a great place to ask that, to set that tone really early in the week, because those are the things that will build those cabin conversations that we've talked about, and especially those conversations even back at home that we know are the most influential for faith retention. When we are incredibly welcoming to questions about God and faith, with particularly the age groups of campers that we are, for the most part, working with, there's some special depth there. And so it's good to hear that 90% of campers say that my questions about God and faith were taken seriously. These people really care about my faith. And if they can leave a week saying that, and they can let their parents know a statement like that, that's a big deal. That's a big win for us as camp leaders.
All right, there we have it. You're both awesome. So grateful for you for this podcast and all of the ways that you support all that we're doing, and for all the hats you wear, because good grief, I'll speak for Jake, do we ever need them in so many ways. So grateful for you.
We flipped the script a little bit this week. We are going to leave you with our quick camp question.
Quick camp question.
Quick camp question. As a mom of campers, what's the one thing that you wish camp directors knew?
I trust you, and I'm handing over my heart. So be worthy of that trust.
I think I trust you. And I'm going to form that trust based on the registration form and the paperwork and all of the front facing things that I see. That's all I have until I have those stories that come home. So your front door, it's not the totality of your story, but that's all I get until I get the stories from home. So, and yeah, you have my whole heart right there on site. So do well.
Grateful for you. Thank you. Thanks everybody for listening to the Sacred Playgrounds podcast.
Thanks for listening to the Sacred Playgrounds podcast. Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/sacredplaygrounds or at Sacred Playgrounds on Instagram. Be sure to hit the follow or subscribe button wherever you're getting this podcast. And if you like this content and it's helpful, you can support the podcast by clicking that support button. Our theme music was written and performed by Taylor Wilson. You can find all his original songs wherever you get your music. Learn more about what we're up to and connect with the team at sacredplaygrounds.com.